Discuss Faraday's laws of electromagnetic induction, beginning with the torque experienced by a current loop, motional EMF, description of Faraday's experiments, the electromotive force and the non-conservative nature of an electric field set up by a changing magnetic field. The loop carries an electric current. The magnetic forces on the long sides of the loop produce a torque that tends to rotate the loop clockwise as viewed from above. In an electric motor, a loop of wire carrying a current is placed in a magnetic field. A simplified version is shown in the figure on the right for a rectangular loop placed in a uniform field. The loop is free to pivot about a vertical axis. When the loop is oriented so that the field is in the plane of the loop, the magnetic forces on the short ends are zero because dFB is equal to IDL cross P. Since DL is parallel to B, DL cross B is equal to. On the long ends of the rectangular loop, the forces are equal but point in opposite directions so that the net force on the loop is always zero. However, there is a net torque that tends to rotate the loop about its axis in the clockwise direction when viewed from above. The same principle is responsible for the action of analog voltmeters and ammeters. This figure shows a rectangular loop of length A and width B carrying a current I. The plane of the loop makes an angle theta with the x-axis. For simplicity, only the loop is shown. The wires carrying the current to and from the loop are not shown. The magnetic field is uniform and lies along the y-axis. The z-axis is in the plane of the loop. We need to find the net force and the net torque on the loop by calculating the force on each side of the loop. In this orientation, sides 1 and 3 are perpendicular to the field. If we define L as being the direction of the current, then L is perpendicular to B. For those sides, F1 is equal to F3 is equal to BIA here, because sides 1 and 3 each have length A, the forces are parallel to the x-axis. F1 is in the positive x direction, F3 is in the negative x direction. The angle between side 2 and B is 90 plus theta. DFB is IDL cross B, which is BIL sine phi. FB is equal to BIB sine 90 plus theta. F2 is BIB cos theta. This is the Z direction. F4 is again BIB sine 90 minus theta, and this is also in the Z direction. But F2 and F4 are in opposite directions. Their sum will be 0. Also, F1 and F3 are equal and opposite, and their sum is also 0. This means that the center of mass does not accelerate under the action of the magnetic field. F2 and F4 lie along the z-axis and have the same line of action. They do not contribute to the torque. F1 and F3 tend to rotate the loop clockwise about the z-axis. Therefore, the moment of F1 or F3 about the z-axis is given by force into the moment arm, BIA into B by 2 sine theta. So, the total torque F1 B by 2 sine theta plus F3 B by 2 sine theta becomes equal to 2 BIA B by 2 sine theta. The maximum torque will be when theta is 90 degrees, and in this case the magnetic field is in the plane of the loop. When theta is equal to 0, the torque is also equal to 0. For a coil of n turns, the total torque is given by BIAB n sine theta, where AB equal to A represents the area of the loop. We now come to Faraday's laws. In 1831, Faraday and Henry found that electrical and mechanical forces are developed when the currents or the relative position of circuits are altered. Faraday found that whenever a bar magnet was pushed in and out of a coil connected to a galvanometer, it caused a deflection. This was an amazing result with no obvious source of EMF being present. Faraday's second experiment showed that when two coils are placed close together, with one of them being connected to a battery, a momentary deflection is caused in the second coil connected to the galvanometer on sudden opening and closing of the switch in the first circuit. These experiments show that whenever the flux linked with a coil is changed, an EMF is induced. It is the rate at which the magnet is moved or current in coil is changed that is significant, and not the amount of current per se. A formal statement of Faraday's laws is as follows. The EMF induced in a circuit is equal to the negative rate at which the flux through the circuit is changing. So this curly E is equal to minus d phi b by dt, where the curly E represents the induced EMF. The negative sign is explained by Lenz's law, which states that the induced EMF is in a direction which opposes the cause which sets it up. Lenz's law is analogous to Newton's third law of motion and also to Le Chatelier's principle, which states that if any state of equilibrium is disturbed, a reaction is induced in a sense to oppose the change. We now come to an establishing of the differential and integral forms of Faraday's laws. Curly E is equal to minus d phi b by dt. Phi b is equal to closed integral b dot ds. Curly E is equal to closed integral E dot dl. From Stokes' theorem, we have closed integral E dot dl equal to integral curl of E dot ds. Therefore, integral curl of E dot ds is equal to minus d by dt of closed integral b dot ds. Since both the integrals are over ds, we have curl of E equal to minus db by dt. Rather, curl of E is equal to minus delta b by delta t. This is the differential form of Faraday's law. The partial derivative has been introduced because B is a function of both space and time coordinates. Now, the electric field has a curl. Let's see how. A changing B sets up an induced electric field. If a conducting loop is placed in a time-varying magnetic field, the flux through the loop will change and an induced EMF will appear in the loop. This EMF will set charge carriers in motion, that is, a current will flow through the loop. Let the magnetic field be at right angles to the plane of the paper. Assume that B is increasing at a rate dB by dt. Loop is of radius r. It encloses a flux phi b which is changing. Hence an EMF E is going to be induced, which is given by minus d phi b by dt. Due to symmetry, the induced electric field E is tangential to the loop everywhere. Hence, lines of E form concentric circles. This EMF sets the charges in motion. A test charge Q0 moving around a circle of radius r does EQ0 amount of E is equal to dW by dQ. dW is equal to E dQ. Also, the work done is equal to force into displacement. The electric field into Q0 into displacement is equal to EQ0 into twice pi r, or curly EQ0 is equal to EQ0 into twice pi r, or curly E is equal to twice pi r E. To generalize, for a closed conducting loop placed in a changing magnetic field, curly E is equal to closed integral E dot dl, which is closed integral E dot dl is equal to minus del B by del T. It is important to remember that the induced electric field set up by a changing magnetic field is different from an electric field due to a static charge, because an induced electric field lines of force can form closed curves. As a changing magnetic field can set up an electric field, it does seem symmetrical and logical that a changing electric field should be able to set up an induced magnetic field, and let us see how. We know that an electric field generated by a changing magnetic field is non-conservative. That is, its lines of force can form closed loops and it does have a non-zero curl. Now, from the equation of continuity, we have divergence of J equal to minus del rho by del T, and divergence of E is equal to rho upon epsilon naught for static electric fields. From Ampere's circuital theorem, we know that closed integral B dot dl is equal to mu 0 I. But I, that is the current, is given by integral J dot ds, where J is the surface charge density. Also, closed integral B dot dl will be equal to integral of curl of B dot ds, which is equal to mu 0 integral J dot ds. So, curl of B is equal to mu 0 J. The apparent contradiction that led Maxwell to change Ampere's circuital theorem is as follows. Consider the discharge of a capacitor through a resistor. Then del rho by del T is not equal to 0, since the charge density is changing. Then divergence of J is equal to minus delta rho by delta T. And since delta rho by delta T is not 0, it implies that divergence of J is non-zero. But curl of B is equal to mu 0 J, and we know that gradient of curl of any vector is equal to 0. This logically implies that divergence of curl of B should be 0, which means that divergence of J should be 0. But how can divergence of J be 0 when divergence of J is non-zero due to the changing charge density? Now this means that divergence of J plus del rho by del T is wrong, or that curl of B equal to mu 0 J is wrong. Divergence of J plus del rho by del T equal to 0 cannot be wrong because it is just a restatement of conservation of charge. Charge can neither be created nor destroyed. It is a fundamental law. It means that curl of B equal to mu 0 J cannot be correct for a system with a varying charge density.